What you see on my desk is me preparing, and have been preparing, a package for the Internal Affairs Department of the FBI in Washington. Also, 6,000 media outlets, which you would have to think that I would have this down to a T, and everything that I'm producing is factual, or they could sue me. Let's see if they do. Haven't yet, now have they? I made some pretty serious accusations. So, the wall of corruption. I'm going to pull a string through all these people and tie them all together. Successfully. Do you know what the odds of that being able to be done if it wasn't truthful? Yeah, impossible. Like times 10. Which means it is the truth. So that's the reasoning for this video. As I put this evidence together, I'm giving you a preview. You get to walk through it with me. You get the people that you voted for, maybe the law firms that you use, the lawyers that you have. Maybe you've been taken advantage of. I am telling you, this is a machine of corruption. And I'm here to prove it to you. What you're looking at now, what's behind me, quite literally, is 4 generations of a cover-up. Let's start from the beginning. Walker, Maurice Gilbert, Sparkman, Jason Cole, Donald Smith. They all work for Divine Millimat. Alex Walker being the president at the time. He's working now with the Catholic Memorial Hospital. Really? Nice job, by the way, hiring him. Now, Walker gave all these people instructions. He knew about FRM. I told him about it. He told me he knew. I told him of the corruption in the divorce court. Stealing Sarah's therapist records, destroying them. So he was my point guy on everything that was going on. Except for he was protecting the criminality of FRM. He was one of the boys, being the president. Remember, 4 law firms run your whole state. Now there's 3. Divine Millimat is one of them. So, Walker had to leverage me to get the other guys off. All those divorce attorneys, wives. Kozel, Tober, Schaff. And then we can go back. He also had to get Ross and Sedgwick off. So now, let's step through. Gilbert, he was his DRA guy, a CPA. Except for, did you know that Gilbert worked as a manager at the DRA for years? How's that? Could he coordinate corruption? He could. We only have a forged tax return in the DRA. The only issue with the DRA has gone on for, 7, 8 years. Do you know why they can't close it? Because it is corrupt. And Gilbert coordinated. Sparkman was the right-hand man of Walker. He is now the president of Divine Millimat. And he knows all about this. He knows he was on the accounting piece. Or the cover-up with the taxes. You see, they had to leverage them. So all these people in that first group leveraged me on the taxes. You see that, Donald Smith, at the end? He only had an interview with Brian Battersby, who could have given us the whole banking department and put them all to jail. Because he was the poster on Implode, if you remember, that accused me. But it came from him. He was only in trouble with the banking department. How do you think he got released? He did their dirty work. Let's keep going. String through them all. Dupree. Well, we can put Dupree with Jim 10 and Mary 10 together. Dupree comes from McLean. Jim 10 and Mary 10, 10 and 10. Their instructions from the puppet master Walker, which they did happily. Now let's take a look. What do you think the text messages, or the email, that from Walker to 10? Don't mediate. That's in the box, don't worry. But that was the instructions. They had to get through statute of limitations. Between 10 and 10 and Dave Dupree, they were only charging me $100,000 a month to do nothing. Because if they were going to do nothing, they were going to get paid for it. Well, why do nothing get paid for it? It was the risk and the criminality of what they were doing. Right. Dupree, I heard, was on his third divorce, possibly getting fired. Right, that's McLean. All right, let's keep going. Then we see Hyder there. You know who Hyder was? Hyder was the replacement for Walker. See, Hyder was at a meeting where he was with Coughlin and Walker, knew the criminality of it, couldn't believe what he heard, except for that night he got a phone call, right, from the puppet master, Walker. Know what he said? We're not going to have any problems, are we? Henry called me and told me that night. I was a little shaken up. The next morning, we had a meeting. Bob Jutras was there. You see him there. And in front of Jutras and Maria Pursuto, I was referred to that conversation with Hyder. You know what? I'm sorry, with Walker. You know what Hyder did? Quite literally, and there's two other witnesses besides myself, jumped up in the air, ran in the corner, and screamed. I wish I was making it up. It was pretty disturbing. Anyhow, he was on board. Marisa found out that the BBO in Massachusetts, Board of Overseers, knew his father was practicing law. Walker leveraged Hyder now to do his bidding, and Hyder did. He did with the IRS, with his meetings with Powell. See, he also has an email as evidence from Walker wanting a release from me regarding the IRS and the DRA, except it was all played, and the banking department. We've got an email from the banking department for Walker about an audit and a consent order that they were constructing, except for we hadn't had the audit for another 2 months. See? Walker leverages Hyder. Hyder then turns around and takes the pieces. The DRA will go away. IRS will go away. All we've got to do is give Walker a release and Divine Milliman. We have that in writing. We could call that evidence. Because what we also have in writing, and just recently found the document from somebody they corrupted, was that they had the offer from the IRS settlement already, but they were leveraging me for their release. Okay? That's why Hyder's so important. Walker could send everybody on this wall to jail. So could Hyder. Because Hyder was dealing with the fraud of the IRS. That's your Tim Powell. Right? They wanted to settle with me. You know what I told them? I'll settle for skulls. Right. They've got to go to jail for what they've done. Let's keep going. Friedman. Friedman, you'll love Friedman. We only had one third-party deposition in the Morris Mahoney case, and it was Friedman. And you know what happened? Friedman wants me to hire a mediator named Gary Lambert. Because I'm still thinking, well, Friedman isn't totally corrupt, is he? Lambert was the previous state senator in New Hampshire. In fact, he should be on the wall. In fact, I have a fee agreement from him here signed. Then he comes back. One thing, a release for Friedman. Right. Friedman, right, was my lawyer representing banking when Walker left. Friedman had 3 bogus complaint orders. Maybe you remember Friedman, because that's going to be in here too, where he said you should go to the authorities, the federal authorities. He was referring to the Ponzi scheme. He was making me think he was going. In fact, he told me he lived on the same street as Carmen Ortiz, the U.S. attorney from Massachusetts. Really? And Jutras saying he was calling the office and speaking to them. Well, she should know all about this then. Remember? Nick Alexander said the same thing. He can open up cases with the FBI. All on tape. You've heard that already. But Friedman could put the Ponzi scheme, FRM, all out there. He knows, because he represented me in the audit. What he forgot to tell me was, CCR we hired. Turns out that CCR, Bill Tazia, was Alex Walker's first cousin. How's that a string through him? Right. He tried to corrupt the audit to make us look guilty. Because you know what? My lawyer, Alex Walker, and Friedman, Lisa Tracy, my controller's lawyer, was Kakavas. You may have heard of him. He's now your U.S. attorney. He was part of the cover-up of FRM. Right. See? We've tied through them all. So Friedman became dangerous. That's why they had to get him a release. They hung over Lambert over my head to mediate. except for I wouldn't give Friedman a release. So I filed a lawsuit against Friedman. And guess what? He made a special request. You'll love this. He asked for the judge who's trying the Morris Mahoney case, Judge Zobel. The only third-party deposition in the case that she's hearing, now making a special request for her to be the judge. How's that for a cover-up? Right. Special request. Don't forget, though, Friedman, again, could put them all in jail. So this isn't an impossibility to do. Let's keep going. We spoke briefly about Coughlin, the attorney that charged me nothing, because after 10 and 10, Walker goes to him, listen, we got to shut him up. We're not going to make through the statutes of limitation. He knows something going on. So you know what he did? He gave me the rope-a-dope. A couple $1,000 a month and we're good. I went from 100 down to 2. As long as you're doing nothing. Now, let's keep going. So Wiggins and Norrie and Dallas Sedgwick, you see there? Alice Walker gave me Ross. Ross knew and Sedgwick knew I caught them in the corruption. You have to just read Dallas Sedgwick's interview where she spells it all out. In fact, she's given us text message, which I've shown you, where she's scared for her life, quite frankly, and says it that way. I am scared to death. Now, why is she scared? Ross is the next president you're going to hear. Wiggins and Norrie, before they closed it down, he was the fourth attorney in this. He was the president of one of the largest law firms. Remember, Kakavas came out of there, and so did Howard. You know, the ones who prosecuted FRM and defended them. They were business partners, remember? And they worked for Wiggins under Ross. He was an important character, and I picked him out during the video, and I told you how important he was. How about this? You see how afraid Dallas Sedgwick is? That's how dangerous John Ross is. Why don't you read that interview and those text messages again? So now Ross got caught. Did you know that Ross and Tober are best buddies? We've got all kinds of buddies here. But they are. You remember the thing in the trial where he did admit that. You need your best friend to commit fraud with you. Howard and Kakavas. Tober and Ross. You don't do this alone. You cover for one another. Okay, here we go now. So now, let me see. We got Sedgwick, Ross. Shaheen and Gordon. They had to move the case out of the Salem court because they couldn't control Luna. Luna was okay with excusing herself. R.P. Saunders shows up for one hearing. He is the right-hand man of Bill Shaheen. When something dirty has to be done, he works. R.P. Shaheen sends him out to do it. I'll explain it. Shows up in court. He gets kicked out. We have a conflict with the judge and R.P. Saunders, who I didn't see for a year, had nothing to do with divorce, get kicked out. Who are we with? Boom. We go up to Rochester, and you'll see the judge, Robert Foley. He kept us in there for 5 years and $5 million and got every one of those people out through statutes of limitation. He worked under Judge Ashley. She signed off. I brought this complaint that we had a mediation that cost $250,000. It was hung up on one issue and one issue only. Stephen Tober wanted his own release. The mediator for 37 years, Judge Goldstein said in all his life in business, he has never seen that before. Well, I bet you've never seen a lot of this before. All right, so there's Foley, there's Ashley. Let's keep going. Now, Shaheen, I spoke to him directly. You know what he told me? R.P. showed up that day because Tober threatened him. And you'll love this. And he got away with it because R.P. has Alzheimer's. The same guy who just negotiated a $100,000 check to the city of Haverhill has Alzheimer's. Really? That same $100,000 check that goes into the bag that makes Bill Shaheen an extortionist. He took that $100,000. Just like he had R.P. You're going to see Lisa Tracy, who was my controller for 30 years. Her husband got in trouble for molestation. They leveraged her. She now works for Shaheen and Gordon. She's now getting all the attorneys I'm getting. I'll explain it later. the corruption, how it could happen? She went through the resumes. That's how it could happen. All right. So Bill Shaheen knew it all. In fact, who appointed the Banking Commission to Hildreth? His wife, who was the senator at the time, Jean Shaheen. Don't tell me they don't know what's going on. This is the leverage. You have to have not only the law firms, but the politicians to back them up with the judges. So everyone you've seen so far on the left should be in jail. Jutras was my divorce attorney for 1.5 years and over $1 million. He knew and he skid through. Who do you think handed me an agreement to sign? Mediation agreement. Not telling me that Tober was a release inside. I spent the time to read it and he went, oh. I mean, for $250,000, you think he would have read it? Right. Oh, he read it all right. That was the trick. I was going to sign it. Tober gets a release. And a release from what if it wasn't corruption? Get going. Now, Nick Alexander, Morris Mahoney, and Eric Renner, they were malpractice attorneys. And they were going to sue everybody to your left. Except that they didn't. They took it right to the wire. Then told me on the day we were filing that they couldn't. The whole thing was bogus. They were insurance defenders, not malpractice attorneys. Morris Mahoney didn't have me sign a fee agreement for months because it was all a scam. These people defend insurance companies. That's who's behind all them too. These are all criminals, but it's the insurance companies too that are involved. And a big part. So the insurers came in and said, we'll take care of it. And when they took care of it, they gave me these two guys. And it was all fraud. Complete fraud. They took almost 10 months. And when we filed the day to file, I knew that they're not going to represent me, the company. They have conflicts. You bet your ass they got conflicts. They represent the insurers here. You see Morris Mahoney? Now I'm suing all of the three of these people. Renner, Nick Alexander, Morris Mahoney. Do you know Morris Mahoney is paying for the defense of Eric Renner and Nick Alexander? How's that for a cover-up? You're going to turn around and tell people they told you to do it? When they're paying for your defense? I don't think so. And neither do they. So they are the second level of corruption here. The second level of covering up. Let's jump to a third. But don't forget, they represented the people we're suing. That's why they couldn't put their name on it. And that's why they couldn't file the complaints. It was bogus from the beginning. Why do you think I've got a $10 million ad now for attorneys that can't get one? It used to be one. Then it went to 3, and I said, oh, screw it. 10. Can't get a call. You think about that. Now, you see Paul Russell. Paul Russell was my buddy. He used to come in almost daily and tell me how his family appreciated all the business that I gave his firm. Except for he was Hyder's good buddy. Right. He said he would represent me, and he did the cover-up. He tried to have this kicked out too. Pincus, you see Pincus? Pincus worked with all these guys. Why do you think you're going to have casino gambling in Massachusetts? Penn National's corrupt. Pincus was my attorney. He didn't want me to go after Penn National because I was getting too close to what they were doing. You know what they were doing? It's a gambling syndicate. I showed you about the wire service. This information is in here too. The FBI in Pennsylvania has been given this information. Not all of it. They'd like more. But not until they start telling the truth and start protecting witnesses that I could come forwards with. And they know it. But they're in the cover-up down there. Who do you think that these people use to get license up here? You don't think you'd go to Bill Shaheen? Watch this. Rockingham Park's going to get, Penn National's going to move and buy it, if they haven't already. It's a done deal. You watch. Just like they moved to Massachusetts. Listen, they're being currently investigated by the FBI. For the last few years, you tell me how you go on and get a casino license knowing that's a fact. And Cantor Gaming, their wire service, I showed you direct contact with mob-related people making bets through there and wire transfer there. Listen, we'll enclose that evidence, and I'll give these names to the internal affairs of the FBI if I know they're going to be protected. Now, let's take a look at the in-house attorneys. What you have to remember is these were all law firms that I hired. And I'm already into the cover-up of the first group. Morris Mahoney was the second cover-up. Now, what did I have to do? Not hire a law firm. I figured, you know what? If I paid them substantially, took them on myself, that they'd be loyal. Ted Little. Maybe you remember this one of my favorite pictures. This was Ted leaving the office. The night before he was supposed to sign the federal lawsuit against Morris Mahoney. See, they were covering up and stalling to protect the second level of corruption. This is him leaving with a suitcase, a bag thrown on him. Well, 3 bags total. I mean, like he was packing to China. Except it was full of evidence. Remember the text messages? They only threatened to kill my children. They're in here, by the way. They may be from Ted. Or they may be from the gentleman below him, Perusis. I'll bet you it's one of the two. It shouldn't be that hard to find. Why don't we ask them? Because if you remember, he's accusing all these people, as I am, of corruption. Remember? He called the authorities of New Hampshire, they are the criminals. And he's right. He even pointed out on the text message that Amy Miller, you'll see there, was working with them. And she was corrupt. We've got an affidavit from 2 people that simply say that what the question was, what have you been saying to defense attorneys? Her answer and response was, again, in front of 2 witnesses, if I tell you, it will incriminate me. That was it. I fired her. She was outside for almost a couple hours trying to get the tape from the police to get it from us because we taped her leaving. She spent hours with the people from Peabody and Arnold. You might have seen a snapshot. We've got the video. We're going to close that. What did they have to say? That was the opposing counsel and you just got fired. Can you say we were working together? Because I can. And this is what else I'm going to say. You see the defense attorneys. You're going to see a second screen of Curley and Curley, Kerrigan, Duggan, right? These are the people representing Alexander and Renner and Morris Mahoney. They come on, Peabody Arnold come on, and they're representing, you'll like this, Friedman, who makes the request for Zobel. Tell me how that happens. And we're supposed to be filing suit against Walker, Friedman. I want you to notice to the right of Ted Little, Tony Aguirre. Do you know what Tony? He got a call from Nick Alexander while he was in the office. I go, what's that about? Oh, I know Nick. Tony worked at Morris Mahoney as an insurance defender, just like Nick. And he also worked for Divine Millimat, as long as we're touching all the bases. Ted brought him in. No kidding. He was working on the DRA, except for the box that I told him to prepare all the information. It was heavy, just there was nothing about the DRA in it. Right, we also put the evidence in about the complaint from Morris Mahoney, where they both tried to throw. Right, they got fired the same day. Perusis. Mike Perusis, before he worked for me, at $200,000 a year, he made pizzas. Right. I had to get just anybody. I do the heavy lifting, but you had to be breathing. The only thing with Perusis was, when we came to Friedman's deposition, they owned him. They made a point for him not to ask certain questions, which they refer to the deposition that I get a little upset. You wonder why. There goes Perusis. Let's go. Moreno was working on the tax piece after we lost to Gary, except for she didn't do anything. She was covering up. We were supposed to have a meeting with people from TIFTA. They were taxpayers advocate. They wanted me to settle for $0. And you can ask her what I requested. Skulls. Right. People going to jail. So she got fired. Neil Pike and Jonathan Breen was put in, right? Their job was to file the complaint and write the complaint against John Friedman. RICO complaint. Except for the day they were supposed to have it done, they both quit on the same day. You know why? Because we were right about Friedman. And they're working for Peabody and Arnold, and the insurers, and Morse Mahoney. Right. None of them, all of them took instructions from them, which is why they lived on the same day. Far-fetched? You see Chris Driscoll to the right? Turns out we got an email from the court. And the email was going to Chris Driscoll. Also, he was still on board. Except for it went to Liberty Mutual, one of the subsidiaries of the people that were suing. He quite literally was getting his emails at work at Liberty Mutual, insurer. Amy Miller, she refers to the text message. Judge Sobel threw out the business claim, which was intentional, because Miller getting kicked out. She doesn't want to call, or even the gentleman in Lawrence, Comier, turns around and won't take the text messages as evidence. Miller was our standing attorney at the time on both cases. How could you not? I tell you why you're not, because you know she is a spy. And that was that. And she got in, right? And got kicked out on a motion, a response that was written by paralegal Julian Long, who threw it so to get her in and out. How could you not use there? Listen, we're trying to find her. We've got 2 agencies now looking for her with subpoenas. Right, can't find her. Could you say in hiding? Right. That was all orchestrated. The text messages say it. They even accused Lisa as being a spy, Tracy. And they accused the attorney that we had. And even told me the day we were supposed to file the RICO complaint. These judges have this. They are corrupt too. The whole process corrupt. Let's keep going. Francesco O'Reilly, we were the last attorney we hired. Except for between Friday and the next Sunday, she turned around and said she quit. She wanted me to go into a deposition that was bogus. That was all her responsibility. And then she was gone. Weller keeps coming back. Weller is working with Peabody and Arnold, trying to corrupt that. He's on board now. They put him on board as our lawyer. We haven't seen him in months, and he hasn't returned any of the emails. That sucker knows if he goes in this, he could go to jail. Let's keep going. We haven't left anybody out, have we? Ronna Weiss, she's the one with the therapist records. Remember Ross in that hearing? Oh, I don't know when I talked to her. Well, I said 2 weeks. Well, I don't know. How about a year? I don't know. This guy remembered something that happened 8 years ago, but couldn't remember 2 weeks ago or a year ago that he met Wise. You know why? Wise one's the PCC. She was how this started. Kozel was her partner in there. Tober ran the cover-up. He was in there for 5 years. Witschoff. Remember the face as a horse on the sign? Don't forget Schaff. I'm trying to. All right. We've already spoke about Foley and Ashley McHugh. Now, McHugh's one of my favorites. You saw that video. He was the judge on Implode. He was the judge that got Ted Little. You had to establish when you should have known for statutes of limitation. Make sure we put that in the bag, too. Because Ted Little, as I was testifying, my own attorney, stopped me 3 different times. Judge McHugh, one of my favorites. This guy's so corrupt, it's almost comical. I showed you the video, right? If you can't see that being corrupt, then you're blind. You also got Judge of the Year and the Golden Parachute at the same time. But Ted Little stood in front of McHugh. I was the sole witness, and we're trying to establish when I should have known. I went through all these guys being spies. I was objected to 3 times. Not by the defense, by Ted Little. Because I was getting in too much that would make a pressure on McHugh kicking it out. McHugh did it anyway. You gotta admit, the guy's a criminal in the 1st degree. So he turns around and gets these guys off on statutes of limitations. So no Tober, no Wise, no 10 and 10, no McLean. Really, all kicked out. Now the other guy's going to get kicked out was Nick Alexander with Morris Mahoney. We missed 3 or 4 cases by 3 days of statute of limitations. Well, they had him for 10 months. Okay. Francois. Francois is the divorce attorney now. They have a deal with Sarah. I'm paying her more than I make. You know what? And I'm not crying about money. This is more important, or I wouldn't be spending all this money chasing these assholes down. Now, isn't that so? But he's trying to strike the deal. He's giving me 6 months before we have an adjustment. Because they've got to make her quiet. Maybe you've seen that video where she lied on an affidavit. She sold a farm. I mean, it's criminal. But the corruption started there. You might have watched the video where I accused him of doing that and said I would go after him. And I'm a man of my word. Cornetta, he's the Lawrence judge. The one hearing the Peabody-Arnold, the Hyder case. You don't think Hyder's from Methuen. You don't think he's been there 1,000 times, do you? They're working in complete sequence. Him and Zobel. One doesn't move with the other. Neither one want to look at the text messages. Right. It's all corrupt. Why do you think we don't have any third-party depositions with Zobel? We only have about 6 or 7 witnesses that would put them in jail, but we can't have that. The only one we do have is Friedman that then wants a release. Let's go to the accountants. Right? We haven't missed anybody yet, have we? CCR. Remember? And Bill Tazia? Bill Tazia, Alex Walker's first cousin? CCR had to cover this up. You couldn't leverage me with the taxes unless you screwed up the returns. They did that. And they know they did that. It was a simple paperwork thing. Cohen caught them. You see Cohen on there? Cohen caught him and told me. He goes, listen, this is a mistake you can't make. You can't accidentally put $38 million on the K-1, call it income. You couldn't screw this up as far as misfiling, except that they did. And it turns out that they got the Cohen. In fact, Cohen forged the tax return that he said that was criminal with my name and sent it to the DRA. Because again, you can't leverage me unless you made something real. It doesn't have to be real. You have to make it that. Grant Thornton knew what they did. They bought CCR. At the same time they bought CCR, they said, we can't work with this anymore. They knew it was corrupt. You don't think they told them the liability? They were working with the IRS, the fraud. They worked with Powell. That's what Hyder and Schwartz was doing and had meetings. We have Cohen's deposition, which immediately I filed a RICO complaint against. I want the feds to look at that. You tell me if that isn't corrupt. Listen, he only got a stamp on a forged copy of a tax return. See, and Lisa Tracy, again, my controller, for 30 years. Her husband gets in trouble. Molestation. You know who comes to her aid? R.P. Saunders. Remember the right-hand man of Bill Shaheen? That's how they own you. They get you when you're in trouble. And you know what they did? They leveraged your 3 little girls, and now she works for them. You know how I get all those in-house attorneys? They came through resumes that she would give me. You know how they all worked for them? She wouldn't give me the ones that they didn't give to her. See? So there is an explanation, isn't there? She destroyed evidence. She purposely lost money for the company so we would go out of business, so I wouldn't be able to afford this attack. Listen, I wish it wasn't true, I really do. But the Shaheen and Gordon Law Office represented her, now didn't they? And he's as guilty can be. And he's walking around, isn't he? How's that? Paralegals. I mean, Linda Nakamura was head of depositions. Remember I did a video? Depositions? No depositions? You can't get these lawyers deposed unless they want to get out. That's what she did. She controlled the whole thing. She took in the new paralegals along with Tracy. You see Julian Long? He screwed up 2 of the motions, responses. How could he have done this? And then he slipped. They had Lisa. We had caught McHugh. You go back in that trial. Ross, I'm sorry, but Judge McHugh there. On that fee agreement. It was a forgery. They had Julian Long stuff it in a box. 17 boxes from Jim 10. Say 1,000 copies in each. 17,000 copies. I had Julian go through them all and find one other original, except for the fee agreement from Wiggins and Norrie, and she couldn't. So guess what? She planted it. We had them. They had to put it back in our possession. You know, when I fired her and caught her and brought her to her attention, she didn't say it wasn't true. What she said was, I'm a good person. I didn't come here to do this. Between Linda and Lisa, Peabody Arnold, Morris Mahoney, that's how it's done. They prepared the exit for Miller. The whole criminality of it. Sharon Donnelly. You know what? These assholes get smart. They started coming after me with victims. She was one. I took her on, and believe me, she was good. I trusted her. She's the one with the letter that her husband works for the mob. Right. A paralegal. She also improperly put motions together for the same reason Julian did. She was off the next day. Eric's a young guy going to college, going to school at UNH. He said simply Miller wanted him to say that we couldn't file a RICO complaint against Friedman. He knew we could. So rather than lie and tell us that he couldn't, he was in the middle, he quit. I think if the FBI speak to him, he'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you. So, this bitch, Tim Powell, from the IRS, he is corrupt with them. He is coordinating this. Why is he the only one I can speak to with the IRS? Now listen, I've got all this information to go of Robert O'Malley from TITCA and Kimberly McDowell. You know this is corrupt. That is part of the cover-up. You don't think that's possible? Remember Jean Shaheen? Did anybody but me looking the papers and the internet to find out that she's being investigated and looked at by pressuring the IRS to target people? Listen, you look at the interviews that she had and stuff in the paper. It'll speak for herself. There's Powell, because Powell was involved in the pressure. They told Powell that I would take the deal, and they didn't have a problem, except for I said no. So Powell's sitting this for a couple of years knowing it's corrupt. Now, TIFTA is the criminal agency that watches the IRS. Well, start doing your job, damn it. I mean, I have it all. I have the evidence here that tells you know. We switched to another screen, Mike. Told you there was more. Let's start with the right. Friedman hired Nicholas Alexander. Peabody and Arnold are representing Hyder and Friedman. And remember, Friedman made a special request with Sobel. They're working together, Peabody and Arnold and Morris Mahoney, right? In the Curly and Curly, Kerrigan and Duggan, they are the fourth cover-up team. They're covering up for the people covered up who's covering up for them. No kidding. Morris Mahoney is paying Curly, Kerrigan, and Duggan. You can't have that and not have a conflict. You're trying to shut them up. Susan Cohen, Lindsay Gill, they are the cover-up team. These people came on board. Every attorney I had there forward was corrupt, that Lisa Tracy was hiring. Who do you think was giving her the resumes? They were feeding these people into me. Driscoll, Breen, all of those people, every one of them. The minute they came in. How's that for timing? You can't make it up. They are running and working with two corrupt courts. They know that I've been dealing with the FBI, and they've been trying to find out what I've been telling them. Now, I have this evidence, and I'm going to give them, and there's more coming. And if their FBI Internal Affairs are willing to work with me on this, I will give them the people. I will tell them the evidence and the witnesses to these crimes. Let's go back just to the left here, right? This is quite literally your governor, your senators, your two senators, ready? Maggie Hassan. Let's see how our state is controlled. Maggie Hassan owes her career, her words, to Jean Shaheen. Jean Shaheen married to Bill Shaheen. Did I introduce Bill to you? You know, the extortionist? The company that he owns, that extorting Lisa Tracy with her 3 daughters? Yeah, those nice people. Ayotte. Ayotte was the AG in the cover-up. You know where she worked? McLean. Remember I told you about the law firms? Well, let's go Hassan and Shaheen. That covers Shaheen and Gordon now, doesn't it? Ayotte, McLean. Wow. You know who also came from McLean? Foster, the AG. Right. And guess who else came from McLean? Furlow, who came out of the AG's office. He came out of McLean. You could say McLean pretty much runs the AG's office. Because I'm saying it. That's their piece of the pie. How does Furlow become the banking commissioner when he's an insurance defender? Whoops, right. Kakavas, remember, his mentor, Ross. He's the one who gets off FRM, prosecutes them, give them the deal of the century, and nobody else goes to jail. He partners up with Howard, who was his partner previous. And then previous to that, they worked together at Wiggins. Remember? You're going to commit fraud. Your best friend. Now, there it is. I'm going to leave Bridget Head for a second. The FBI? How is it that I go to New Hampshire with these text messages? They damn near attacked me. Good luck, by the way. Now, we did request that camera and that video. Actually, 2 times. I'm not forgetting that you have it and I want it. Dupree and William Behe. They're your FBI in Pennsylvania. They know all this. But we caught you covering up some of the higher level guys, right, in this corruption. Now you're wondering what I know. Tell you what, I'm going to wait for you to arrest these guys. And then I'm going to tell you who you missed. Or I'm going to tell your bosses who you missed. Remember? No, Nubia Bomadia? She's only selling state licensing to illegals. Remember? I told you, Brown, to do something about that. You seem to be stuck on our borders. Well, there's a good reason. And listen, when you say over 99%, what is that? That's either 100 or 99, by the way. And listen, you put your hand around Kelly Ayotte, didn't you? Right? Did you forget that Kelly Ayotte was the cover person for all these people? Right. Nice job, by the way. You kept right to the public. You didn't want to speak about the corruption. Kevin Abar did and got elected. And those ones who didn't. You know why? People know the truth. Carmen Ortiz. Friedman says he lives on your street, was talking to you. So was Jutras. So you must know all about this. Because when I went to the Mass FBI, walked through the door, and it said open at 9:15, closes at 5. I was there about 11. It seems like it was open, but closed to me. And when I got on the phone, all they wanted to know was the names and addresses of my witnesses. I mean, Jesus, how bold do you want to be? How corrupt are you? Foster, your AG? McLean. Now let's focus on Bridget Head for a minute. Do you remember I showed you those handwritten notes that he knew and had an interview with Donna Soucy, who was then the attorney of the Banking Commission, who referred back to an attorney, Ashley, and Ashley was accusing them of covering it up, the Ponzi scheme. The fact that Hildreth was friends with the defense attorney, Gallagher, and that he had his own brother on the Ponzi scheme. Went on for another 5 years, by the way. God knows how many more people had their money stolen. But he knew. So Head had that interview. So let's start thinking for a minute, all right? Out of all the people to give those handwritten notes to, it found its way to me. Interesting. Why? Why me? You know, I'm the guy that's going to shove it up your ass, right? So I'd be the last guy you give it to. Or would I? Could you say that part of the cover-up, and listen, if they're good at anything, I'm showing you a 4-tier cover-up. What if this thing's getting closer with the Ponzi scheme and breaking open some of these things? You'd have to throw them, I don't know, a guinea pig. So why would someone keep personal notes to 4 or 5 years old on a subject that goes back to 2003? But yet he kept them. And mysteriously, it worked its way to me. Unless you're the scapegoat. And wouldn't the scapegoat come out of the AG's office? I surely think so. So they're going to throw Head under the bus. head be the sneaky bastard that he is. You have to be a sneaky bastard to work with these guys. That's why he saved them. He's going to go, that's my insurance policy. So it means that Richard Head is cashing in his insurance policy with me. And don't worry, Richard, I'm sending it to the internal affairs of the FBI. But that's what you wanted me to do. That's the only reason why I have it. You're the scapegoat. No, if I'm right, we're going to be hearing about that pretty soon now, aren't we? Except for he doesn't want to be the scapegoat. And there's where we are. And that's the only explanation we could have. So, in closing, I am putting all this evidence together, and I'm giving it to them. But I am telling you, I just ran a string through every one of these people. It is impossible not to be true, 100%. What kind of state, whether it be Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, or Mass, do you want to live in? You want to keep closing your eyes? You put these people back in office. Scott Brown, you knew. Shame on you. You remember those attack ads you turned around and started getting into the criminality? You took it right off. You didn't take it off because it wasn't true. You took it off because the GOP, Republican Party, told you to shut up because they know that that would send Ayotte to jail. And they already had one Republican senator. They rolled the dice for two, except for it was dishonest. And you know it. And deserve you right. Thank you.